Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into an intense exploration of identity.
We are. It's one of those topics that demands a complete overhaul of how you see things.
A total overhaul. I mean, how you see the world, how you see yourself, and maybe most radically, how you view everyone else around you. Our mission here is to take these powerful spiritual sources and trace this single foundational idea.
The idea that the spiritual reality has, for all intents and purposes, completely superseded the natural one.
Exactly. We're talking about a transformation in your perspective that makes all the external, visible categories, well, secondary, maybe even irrelevant.
And this deep dive, it's all grounded in what we're calling the spiritual foundation of identity. It revolves around what it means to be a new creation.
Which all comes from our defining text.
Right. It's 2 Corinthians 5, specifically verses 16 and 17. This passage just dictates this monumental shift in how we're supposed to engage with, well, all of human existence.
And that transition in verse 16 is really the engine for this whole conversation, isn't it? It's an instruction that is, frankly, impossible to follow without a complete internal rewrite.
It is. Paul writes, "Therefore, from now on, we regard no one according to the flesh."
From now on.
Yes, a hard stop. He continues, "Even though we have known Christ according to the flesh, yet now we know him thus no longer." That sets the mandate.
And then comes the part that makes it possible.
Exactly. The definitive statement. "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new."
Regard no one according to the flesh. I mean, just stop on that for a second. It's an instruction to just discard the natural labels we use to judge people's worth.
Everything. Nationality, history, wealth, appearance.
It's basically saying that the physical external reality is now redundant because a spiritual reality is taken over.
It's the ultimate elevation of spirit over matter. And that's what's going to guide us through everything today. We're working with two core principles that come right out of this.
Okay, what are they?
First, that the Bible is addressing the spiritual, and that the spiritual surpasses the natural. It doesn't just equal it, it completely overtakes it in importance.
And the second?
Second, that Jesus is the true light. He is the exclusive source that defines what that new spiritual reality even is.
And the critical takeaway, the thing that has to frame everything we discuss, especially when we talk about our own identity, is that this newness starts with the spiritual.
Yes, shifting us so that we are, in the words of the text, thus no longer in the natural, in the flesh.
And this isn't a suggestion, it's a declaration, it's finished.
Which means we have to immediately rethink how we calculate value. If the spiritual is the new measure, well, our old accounting methods are completely obsolete.
Let's jump right into that. Let's look at the practical side of the spiritual reorientation, and there's no better place to start than that famous and challenging analogy in Luke 21.
The widow's mites.
The widow's mites. Luke 21, verses 1 through 4.
This is really where that first principle, the spiritual surpassing the natural, gets put to the test. The scene is observational. Jesus is sitting opposite the treasury, and he's just watching.
And we need to picture this. The temple treasury wasn't some little box. It was a very public area, trumpet-shaped collection bins. Donations were, visible and loud if you were dropping in a lot of heavy coins.
Right. So Jesus observes the rich putting their gifts into the treasury. And the sources tell us they were giving from their abundance.
So these are large, impressive, very public offerings, donations that showed off their status, their material success. They gave so much, but it barely made a dent in what they had left. It was surplus.
Exactly. It was high in natural value, high in visibility, but you could argue it was low in spiritual cost.
And then the focus shifts completely.
To this one individual whose offering was numerically laughable in comparison, a certain poor widow putting in 2 mites.
2 mites, 2 lepta. For anyone listening, a lepton was the smallest copper coin. I mean, the absolute lowest denomination you could have, worth maybe a few minutes of labor.
She puts in 2 of them. It's insignificant, invisible compared to the clanking gold coins going in.
In any natural material calculation, her gift is a statistical 0. It would barely even register on the temple's daily books.
But Jesus's verdict just flips the entire accounting system on its head. He says, "Truly I say to you that this poor widow has put in more than all."
More than all. That phrase is just stunning. How does a spiritual value system justify saying 2 pennies are numerically superior to what might have been a huge portion of the temple's daily income?
Because he wasn't grading the quantity. He was grading the percentage of self. He explains it. "For all these out of their abundance have put in offerings for God."
But she, out of her poverty, put in all the livelihood that she had.
And that's the key. The sources make this point so clear. She didn't just give most of what she had. She put in all she had to live on.
So the spiritual value of the act is defined entirely by the commitment, the sacrifice, the totality of the surrender.
Right. The rich gave from their safety margin. She surrendered her safety margin completely. It's a demonstration of absolute spiritual reliance on God for what comes next.
This is the perfect application of our first principle. If we regard no one according to the flesh, we can't regard their bank account according to the flesh either.
Exactly. If you have abundance but you only give from the surplus, your spiritual commitment is shallow no matter how big the check is.
But if you have nothing and you give your all, your spiritual commitment is absolute. Those two mites become infinite in their spiritual weight.
It just destabilizes all of our natural systems of grading value.
Which leads directly to the next point, right? If the spiritual is paramount, how does the average person even begin to grasp this new system?
That's where Paul steps in. In 1 Corinthians chapter 2, he makes this critical distinction between the natural man and the need for spiritual discernment.
Okay, so what's the problem?
Paul recognizes that this spiritual reality is essentially hidden from anyone operating purely on their natural senses. He writes that God has revealed the deep things of God to us, but he's done it through his Spirit. The knowledge is there. It's the reception mechanism that's the issue.
And the text places this extreme limitation on the natural man. We should probably define that term.
Yeah, the sources define the natural man as the unspiritual self, just as it is by nature.
So this isn't necessarily like a bad person or a criminal. It's just someone operating completely within the limits of their five senses, relying only on logic, observation, material data.
And Paul says this person cannot receive the things of the Spirit of God.
Cannot. Not will not, but cannot.
It's an issue of capacity. They're a different signal entirely. And why? Because they are foolishness to him.
Foolishness, that's such a strong word. It implies active incomprehension. That's like listening to a language you don't speak and just concluding the speaker is babbling nonsense.
That's a perfect way to put it. The natural mind is simply incompatible with spiritual data. The things of God are spiritually discerned.
So it's like trying to process a high-speed fiber optic signal with an old dial-up modem.
Yes, the system just breaks. The data is either incomprehensible or it's actively rejected as illogical, as absurd, because it defies natural categories, like the widow's mites example.
That really helps explain so much of the resistance we see in the world. The sources highlight that the things of God are only known through open communion between God's spirit and our spirits. So you have to have the spiritual life first to even have perception.
And this perception gives a huge advantage to the new creation. The spiritually awakened person, he says, judges all things, yet he himself is rightly judged by no one.
That can sound incredibly lofty, can it? Maybe even arrogant if you don't get the context. If I'm a spiritual person, why can't anyone judge me? And why do I get to judge everything? Doesn't that make the whole system subjective?
That's a great question. It brings us right back to the framework. The spiritual person judges all things because they are operating with a superior framework.
Okay, an example.
Think of a trained structural engineer examining the foundation of a skyscraper. He can judge the integrity, the materials, the compliance with complex codes. A layperson can only judge the color of the paint on the outside walls.
And the layperson's critique of the foundation is just irrelevant.
It's irrelevant because they lack the necessary framework to even make a judgment. The spiritual person is the one with the blueprint. They have access to the higher level data.
And the reason he's rightly judged by no one is because the critics, the natural man, they don't have the framework, the spirit, to evaluate his tools or his judgment.
Exactly. The spiritual person is working off a completely different, higher reality.
And Paul caps this all off with that truly astonishing claim in 1 Corinthians 2.1c. He ties this spiritual advantage directly to the source of the whole framework.
He says, "For who has known the mind of the Lord that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ."
We have the mind of Christ. That means the engineer isn't just following the blueprint.
He helped write the blueprint. This is the ultimate elevation of perspective that allows us to fulfill that radical mandate from 2 Corinthians, to disregard the superficial natural categories, because our tool for discernment is now spiritual, and it comes directly from the Creator.
So we've established the need for this spiritual framework. Now we have to look at the power source itself, which brings us to your second principle, Jesus as the true light.
Right. When we talk about the true light, we have to start in John chapter 1. It doesn't just introduce Jesus, it places him as the defining reality of the entire universe.
The passage establishes his absolute preeminence. John states that all things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. So he's the foundational substance of all existence.
But then comes the truly spiritual definition. In him was life, and the life was the light of men.
The life was the light. It's not an accessory. It's not a separate feature. Existence, vitality, illumination, they're all intrinsically tied to him.
And this true light is immediately contrasted with darkness.
The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. That lack of comprehension, as we were just saying, it isn't a failure of strength. It's a failure of capacity.
That is so crucial. The language doesn't suggest darkness fought the light and lost.
Yeah.
It suggests darkness failed to grasp it, to overtake it. Darkness is simply the absence of the life that is the light.
And this is where the sources brought up that fascinating interpretation about Genesis, the idea that let there be light is permissive. Help us unpack that because it feels really important here.
Okay, so if we look at the creation story in Genesis, God speaks light into existence before the sun and moon are even formed.
Right.
The interpretation of permissive light suggests that Jesus, the true light, is the very enabling force that allows any reality, physical or spiritual, to exist in the first place. It's not just a poetic metaphor for morality.
You're saying the physical world and life itself only function because of the foundational permissive existence of the true light.
That's the idea. It elevates Jesus from being a powerful spiritual figure to being the literal essential mechanism of creation. And the application of this light is universal. John 1.9 confirms, he is the true light which gives light to every man coming into the world.
He's the necessary and only source of illumination for all humanity.
And if we receive that light, it changes our trajectory completely. It enables us to stop being the natural man and start operating in the spiritual realm. We see the result of this in Psalm 56.
The psalmist acknowledges this deliverance. You have delivered my soul from death. Have you not kept my feet from falling? So it's deliverance from the ultimate consequence, death, and also from immediate failure from stumbling.
And the purpose of this twofold deliverance is singular. It enables the believer to walk before God in the light of the living.
So to walk in the light of the living means our whole existence is now predicated on the true light.
It's the environment where the life that is the light is fully manifested. And this defines the believer's identity, which Jesus then powerfully summarizes in the Sermon on the Mount.
Right. In Matthew 5, he gives his disciples these two distinct but connected identities. You are the salt of the earth, and you are the light of the world.
And the sources really insist that we have to look deeper here, emphasizing that principle. Character precedes conduct. Salt before light.
Okay, let's focus on salt first. Historically, salt wasn't just for seasoning. It was a preservative and antiseptic. It was essential for cleansing. It was even a form of currency.
The word salare comes from the Latin word for salt.
Right. So salt speaks to essence, to preservation, to internal quality. That's the character.
And if the salt loses its savor, its internal quality, it's good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot.
Oh.
If the character fails, the external actions are meaningless.
But if the character is sound, if that spiritual essence is preserved, then the conduct naturally follows, which is where the light comes in.
A city on a hill cannot be hidden. The light is visible by its very nature. It speaks to visibility, guidance, action. That's the external conduct.
And the purpose of this light, it's not for self-glorification. You don't put a light under a basket. You put it on a lampstand. The whole point is visibility.
And that purpose is made crystal clear in verse 16. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven.
Our conduct, rooted in our character, is meant to point directly back to the true light. This spiritual reality has to manifest physically.
And this emphasis on visible works, powered by the true light, brings us to that staggering promise Jesus makes in John 14.12 about the greater works.
This verse is one of the most audacious statements in the New Testament. Most assuredly, I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also. And greater works than these he will do, because I go to my Father.
The promise of doing the works Jesus did is monumental enough, but greater works.
How is that even possible?
It's tied directly to the spiritual transition that's enabled by his departure. The sources remind us that darkness ruled until the cross. But when Jesus goes to the Father, it inaugurates the age of the Holy Spirit.
Which means the true light is now decentralized. It's distributed through his followers globally.
That's the key. The works aren't necessarily bigger miracles, like turning oceans into wine. They're greater in scale and scope. Jesus ministered in a tiny geographic area for 3 years.
But His followers, powered by the Spirit, take the light to every nation across thousands of years. That's the greater work.
And that kind of massive dissemination requires a structure. And that structure is what defines the body of the new creation. Colossians 1:18 gives us the definition.
He is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he may have the preeminence.
Jesus is the head, and we are the body, the church. The power, the discernment, the light, it all flows from the head to the body. We are the unified physical mechanism for the true light to shine visibly in the world.
Which enables those greater works.
Exactly. And this distinction between the spiritual body and the natural world is crucial because it informs how we understand the difference between the good crop and the false crop.
The wheat and the tares.
The wheat and the tares.
Okay, this theme of spiritual identity, it really comes to a head in the parable of the wheat and the tares in Matthew 13. Jesus uses this agricultural metaphor to describe the reality of the kingdom of heaven operating in the world.
And the setup is deceptively simple. A farmer sowed good seed wheat in his field. But then there's this malicious, sneaky intervention. While men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way.
We need to spend a moment defining tares. I think we can go deeper here. Tares are a specific type of weed, Darnell. Why is it such a perfect, sinister metaphor?
Well, darnel is terrifyingly deceptive. In its early stages, it looks almost exactly like wheat. The leaves, the stalks, the color. You can't tell them apart until the grain head actually forms.
And by then it's too late.
It's too late because it becomes clear it's a non-bearing, prickly plant. But the truly terrifying part is that the seed of darnel contains a psychoactive toxic alkaloid.
So if you harvest it and mill it with the wheat,
the resulting flour can cause dizziness, nausea. It can even be fatal. It's an imposter that threatens to poison the entire good crop.
The deception isn't just cosmetic, it's inherently toxic. So the servants, when they see this infestation, they have a very natural reaction. Do you want us to go and gather them up?
Right. They want to fix the problem right now. Purge the field.
But the farmer refuses, and he establishes this crucial mandate of patience for our current spiritual age. No, he says, lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them.
Let both grow together until the harvest.
This is a perfect example of spiritual discernment overriding natural impulse. The natural impulse is to purify the system, but the spiritual reality acknowledges the risk of collateral damage.
Their roots are all intertwined. You destroy the good crop trying to get rid of the bad.
So the mandate is coexistence until the final separation.
And the separation is absolute, but it's delayed. At harvest, the reapers will first gather the tares to be burned and then gather the wheat into the barn. And the sources are clear. This harvest and these reapers are spiritual. This is about the final judgment, not an agricultural event.
This parable is fundamentally about spiritual identity and origin. So we have to use the sources now to contrast these origins. The wicked, the tares, versus the godly, the wheat.
Let's start with the wicked, the tares.
Yep.
Their spiritual origin is described in Psalm 58 with just uncompromising severity. The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they are born, speaking lies.
Estrangement from the very beginning. This points to that inherited, unredeemed nature of humanity, the default state of the natural man we talked about. This is the origin story of the tare.
And it's confirmed when you trace their spiritual lineage. The sources ask, who is the father of the liars? Jesus identifies them in John 8. You are of your father, the devil.
And he says the devil speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it.
That's the chilling part. From his own resources. This means the wicked aren't just repeating falsehoods they learned somewhere else. They're generating lies from their own essential nature. They are the darnel, producing toxic fruit from their inherent spiritual being.
Their nature is described with these visceral metaphors, like having poison, like the poison of a serpent.
And Revelation 20 confirms that this serpent is the dragon, that serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan. The connection is absolutely clear. The nature of the tare is rooted in the ultimate spiritual enemy.
And this nature leads to this profound resistance to spiritual truth. Psalm 58 describes them as being like the deaf cobra that stops its ear, who will not heed the voice of charmers.
It's not just stubbornness, it's an active spiritual refusal rooted in the natural mind's inability to process the divine signal.
Which brings us right back to discernment. The message of the cross, the ultimate charm, the ultimate truth is foolishness to those who are perishing, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians. They stop their ears because their natural default state just deems the spiritual message absurd.
And the root motivation for this state, it's pride. Psalm 59 links their destruction to their arrogance. For the sin of their mouth, let them even be taken in their pride. Pride is the driving force of the unspiritual self.
And since they can't access the true light, they have to rely on deception. The wicked shine a false light because Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light.
It's the perfect spiritual analog to the tare looking exactly like the wheat. It's a deceptive imitation of genuine spiritual reality. The wicked originate from the womb, and their default is spiritual estrangement.
Okay, so now let's contrast this radically with the godly, the wheat. We are meant to be the good crop.
The sources say it plainly. Not so the godly. They are defined by an intentional preternatural origin.
And we see this powerful distinction in Jeremiah 1, in that stunning declaration of an intentional spiritual relationship.
God says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations."
The godlies are not defined by the natural, estranged origin of the tares. They're defined by a pre-existent, intentional, spiritual knowledge and sanctification.
The contrast is just so stark. One originates in natural estrangement, the other in eternal spiritual intention.
And this brings us back to the most personal, the most tense moment of this whole discussion. The question from the sources that speaks to our deepest doubt.
So what about us who feel that we are the tares no matter how genuine we think we are?
This is the moment where the natural man's self-judgment clashes with the spiritual decree.
And it's a vital question, because that feeling of being inadequate, of seeing the destructive potential of the tare within yourself, that's a real part of the human experience. But the answer can't be found in your feelings.
It has to be found in the absolute objective declaration of 2 Corinthians 5.17. This is the escape route.
It is. The answer just overrides all feelings, all past behaviors, even your natural origin. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. This transformation is not a process in its essence. It is an immediate, definitive break with the past.
When Paul says, "Old things have passed away, behold, all things have become new," he's confirming that the identity of the estranged man, the tare, has been spiritually nullified.
If you are in Christ, you are thus no longer in the natural, in the flesh. Because the newness is fundamentally spiritual. It transcends the origin story of the tare.
So we are the good crops, known and sanctified from the beginning, and redeemed from the spiritual dangers of the darnel. The power of the new creation is that it just replaces that natural, unredeemed identity completely.
The transition from tare to wheat is immediate upon entrance into Christ. You shift from the realm of the natural mind that can't receive spiritual things to the spiritual mind that has the mind of Christ. The focus is no longer on being the weed, but on bearing the good fruit of the spiritual reality that's now within you.
Okay, so if the new creation is defined by this absolute spiritual identity, we have to know how that identity is verified. How is it demonstrated publicly?
What's the observable proof?
Exactly. What is the proof that we've moved from the natural man to the spiritual new creation? The sources guide us to this concept of the banner.
Right. Psalm 60.4 gives us the framework for this visibility. God has given a banner to those who fear you, that it may be displayed because of the truth.
A banner isn't a secret symbol. It's a visible standard, a rallying point, a point of identification.
And embracing this banner is directly linked to spiritual strength and valor. Psalm 60.1 says, "Through God we will do valiantly."
This strength is reinforced in Daniel 11. It says those who know the covenant, who understand and align with the spiritual reality, they will be strong and carry out great exploits.
While those who are corrupted by flattery are defined by their wickedness. So the banner is tied directly to truth, courage, and action against corruption.
So if the banner is displayed because of the truth and it grants valor, we have to ask, what is this thing that's being displayed?
And the explicit answer comes from the Song of Solomon 2.4. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was leave.
Love. That's the banner.
Love is the defining, visible, and comprehensive characteristic of the new creation. It is the truth displayed in action, the strength wielded in compassion. It is the ultimate test of identity.
It's not just an emotion, it's the spiritual standard flying over the camp.
Which is precisely why Jesus made love the non-negotiable, the true test of discipleship in John 13.
He says, "By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another."
Notice how clear that is. All will know. This proof isn't internal or theoretical. It's external and observable. If the new creation is defined by a spiritual identity, its visible maturity is verified by this specific mutual love.
And this moves us entirely away from subjective spiritual feelings and into tangible actions, which is why 1 John chapter 3 shifts the discussion to what this love actually looks like in the real world.
The standard is set first, modeled by Christ. By this we know love, because he laid down his life for us.
And the mandate is proportionate. And we also ought to lay down our lives for the brethren.
And laying down your life, it doesn't just mean martyrdom. It means prioritizing the spiritual and physical needs of others above your own natural self-preservation.
But the text immediately brings that huge sacrificial standard down to a practical daily application. So it's not just some abstract ideal.
Right. Love must not be in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. This is where the new spiritual reality has to manifest in observable conduct.
And to stress the contrast, the text relates this right back to our very first principle about the spiritual surpassing the natural.
It does. The lack of love, the failure to display the banner, is defined by the one who has this world's goods, natural abundance, but shuts up his heart from his brother in need.
So that person might be rich, they might be influential, they might be giving from their abundance like the people at the temple. But if they shut their heart, they fail the spiritual test of the banner of love.
The natural resource is there, but the spiritual willingness to repurpose it for others is absent. It creates a clear spiritual hierarchy. Tangible, material intervention motivated by truth and love is the required evidence of the new creation.
It's the spiritual demand applied physically, and the reward for this active, truthful love.
Assurance. The passage concludes that this is how we know that we are of the truth and shall assure our hearts before him. Love indeed and truth acts as the spiritual proof that solidifies our new creation identity against all that self-doubt about being a tare.
So we began this deep dive with that radical mandate from 2 Corinthians. The old things are passed away, all things are new, and we must regard no one according to the flesh. This requires a full spiritual overhaul.
We've seen how this newness demands that spiritual value, rooted in sacrifice and commitment, like with the widow's mites, always supersedes natural abundance.
And this requires spiritual discernment, which gives the new creation, who has the mind of Christ, the unique capacity to judge all things from a divine blueprint.
We established that our identity as the godly, the wheat, the good crop, is rooted not in a natural origin, but in divine foreknowledge and sanctification. And that provides the absolute escape route from the deceptive toxicity of the tares.
And finally, we confirmed that the undeniable visible proof of this new spiritual identity is the banner of love.
A love that has to be demonstrated not in abstract words, but in concrete deed and truth, which often involves the spiritual repurposing of our natural resources.
The whole journey just demands this constant conscious reorientation away from external superficial measurements and toward the internal spiritual reality. The mandate stands. Because we are a new creation, we are directed to look beyond the natural in every single regard.
So if the spiritual life is defined by love in deed and truth, and this love is the banner over the new creation, we want to leave you with this final provocative thought. It weaves together the widow's mites and the banner of love. If the spiritual measure is based on commitment, not quantity, what single act of your physical abundance, your time, your comfort, your money, or some resource, could you spiritually repurpose this week to lay down for a brother or sister in need, demonstrating the true measure of the spiritual reality within and ensuring the world knows you by your light?